Welcome to a new episode of Let Me Say This. I'm your host, tishatyler. My guest today is Sheena Yap Chan. Sheena is an award-winning author, entrepreneur, self-confidence coach. She's done so many things in her amazing career, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with her today. Hey, Sheena, how are you today?
Hey Tisha, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here today and just, being able to chat with you. It's an honor.
Absolutely. The honor is mine. Let me just ask you, who is Sheena Yap Chan?
Sure. So, a little bit about me. I was born in the Philippines and my family moved to Canada when I was 7. Living here in Canada at that age in the late 80s and early 90s, I never saw any female Asian role models that I could look up to. I just felt really ashamed of who I was. And I thought to be beautiful, I had to be a blonde hair, blue eyed girl named Heather to be accepted. And it wasn't until
Right.
in my 20s when I really embraced who I was. And that came from dyeing my hair back from blonde to my original color. And that really gave me that sense of pride, like, this is who I am. I'm Asian and I'm just going to embrace it.
Hmm.
But there was still this huge problem of not having enough representation. Like, there's this huge gap of, Asian people in Hollywood or having that representation, the kind of representation we wanted. And so I've always craved that kind of representation because I want other Asian women to feel empowered and realize their own worth and to be able to see what's possible for themselves. And I realized if I really wanted to have that representation, then I had to start with myself. Even if I had no clue what I was going to do, that's how the Tao of Self Confidence came out, right? So I started this podcast where I started interviewing Asian women about their stories of how they're able to overcome their confidence issues and thrive and have this strong representation of Asian women. Society still sees us as quiet and submissive and obedient, or we're treated as sex objects. Even when I Google the term Asian women, the first thing it pops up is like, are Asian women for yellow fever? And it's like, we're more than that. Like, is that really the topic we really care about? No, it's not, right? We really do need a platform where we can showcase stronger Asian women who do different things, who can be a comedian, who can be an entrepreneur, who can fly a plane without her feet because she was born with no arms. Like, we're strong, we're resilient, we can do so many things. And the more we can showcase this, the more we can help other women out there who are feeling like they're not enough, or even show our future generation that you can go out there and do something different.
I think you said a couple of things that stuck out to me. One, you dyed your hair blonde.
It's like, at first, yeah, I enjoyed it, and then as I kept on trying to upkeep it, I didn't really like paying $80 to just retouch my roots. That was one thing. Maybe that's the Asian in me, just the cheapness. But I realized too, like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is not who I am. Right. And
Okay.
everyone's different, right? Everyone has their own thing. But for me, it didn't sit well. And that's why I said, I'm just going to dye it back to my original hair color. And the moment that happened, like, I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, I'm myself again. Like, this is me.
So I think that's really the point that I wanted to get to, though, was that at that point of realizing who you really were, still living in Canada and still not having much representation of you or people who look like you, where did you find the strength to say, I am Sheena Yap Chan, a Filipino Chinese Canadian, and this is who I am, and I'm okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it started with that, and I think just little things along the way helped me realize who I really am. And I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing, but it did
Mhm.
start with me dyeing my hair black again, and or
Mhm.
dark brown, and just like being able to accept everything about me and not have to apologize to other people because of who I am.
Mhm.
And it's not easy. Like, there's still days where I feel like I'm not always confident because we're all human, but that
Mhm.
takes a lot of work, right? Learning to work on yourself, learning to see other people's or listen to other people's stories, right? Listening to what they
Right.
go through and realizing, like, she was able to go through that and still thrive. Like, if she can do it, then so can I. And especially women of color, showing others what's possible, and just, taking away from the gender biases and model minority myths that we face till today.
I found that my power story was even starting this podcast. And I think I shared with you in a conversation that we've had. This podcast has been years in the making, but I did not have the self confidence to just step out and to do it. My desire was to share stories of entrepreneurs that are not being shared, showing the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities, the imperfections, so that other entrepreneurs and business owners realize that you are not alone. You are not the only one that struggles with balancing your books. It's a constant, I've got to keep going. And that's all you can do is just keep pushing and keep moving. I really admire your commitment to women's empowerment, especially for women entrepreneurs. When did you realize that your destiny for empowering women, especially Asian women?
I think just, sometimes when you're online and on TV and you look at like at you see the same like five people you see everywhere, there's just like
Mhm,
that breaking point where you're like, enough is enough. Like I'm sick and tired of seeing the same people over and over and over again. Like, where's the
mhm,
diversity? Like,
mm.
instead of me complaining, that's when I decided to just start one. And even
Right.
then, with my own confidence issues, like I couldn't find any support. And one of the things as women, especially women entrepreneurs, that we need is support.
Mhm,
Like people as women, we feel like we're always alone in our own journey, but really we all go through the same thing. And I think learning to create safe spaces and learning to work together really helps us build up one another. Because right now we're facing such a huge confidence gap, right? Women, I want women to realize we're so capable than we
mhm,
realize, but it's because of how we see ourselves is what stops us from taking that first step. And so if we can help women rise up and believe in themselves and give them the confidence to go out there and do these amazing things, like that's how we can change the world, I believe. I always believe women just do a better job, but because
So do I.
guys, they're like 40% ready and they're just going to go ahead and do it. They're going to ask that
Right.
question, they're going to go after that promotion.
Right.
Even if they get rejected, they don't care. As long as they went for it, that's all that matters. If they got that result, they're going to move on to the next. But as women, I know as women, we're more analytical, we are more emotional because we're women. We're not made the same way as men, right? So we're going to overthink it a little. We're always going to keep over preparing and we're always going to think it's not enough. But sometimes
Mhm.
you just got to go out there and do it, even if it's not perfect. Learning to make mistakes and just
Right.
overcoming them is huge, right? And learning not to be perfect. I know society sees women as like just these gentle beings being told what to do and just like never do anything. And the labels that's put on us also hurts us, right? We're too aggressive. It's like if we go out there and do our own thing, we're too aggressive, we're too much, we're too out there, we're bragging. I'm like, are you for real? Like guys do the same exact thing. Why are they being praised as confident and courageous while we're being
Mhm.
labeled as like the total opposite? And so the only way to do that is like to either eliminate those words or just embrace it. I'm like, if you're going to call me aggressive, I'll be aggressive.
I'll be aggressive.
If it helps women rise up, why not?
Right.
Like, these names need to be taken down or just, let them say it and we'll just keep moving forward because
Mhm.
enough is enough. Like it's 2021. We still face so much injustice. And the pandemic also has really affected women negatively more than men. I mean, like in December, they were saying there was 100% job loss, right? So it's really important for us to help each other out instead of like tearing each other down, right? Like, so, I mean, it's no secret that women can be catty, and especially in the office, right? I know
Yeah.
I've been through that, and at times I wanted to be catty right back at them. Learning to work together is something that we need to do, right, as women. And I know it's easier said than done and it takes a lot of work, but we got to start somewhere. And even with some of the things that's been going on, like the rise of Asian targeted hate crimes, right? Like they're
Mhm.
saying now there's a divide between all these different cultures. But for me, I don't see it that way. I want us to be all in solidarity because we all go through this, right? We
Mm.
all go through racism, prejudice, biases, and fighting with each other is not the answer.
So one thing I did want to kind of go back to, and you mentioned the stereotype of Asian women being submissive and passive and sex objects and the such. Asian women are also known as entrepreneurs. Asians are known
Yeah.
for owning businesses. We were talking about the movie Crazy Rich Asians, and that book and that movie, it was groundbreaking because it really depicted Asians in a very different light. Everyone, though, tried to identify the lead character by what business her family owned. So, talk a little bit about that. And then also I think it's a dichotomy of Asian women are known as passive and submissive, but then Asian businesswomen are known as cutthroat and uncaring. So how do you get those two
Oh, wow.
people in the same, yeah, in the same woman? How is that?
I think it's just learning to just show up as who you are, like just truly who you are. And, being able to do that is not always an easy job. That's why it takes work on yourself every single day, right? Like, not all women entrepreneurs are cutthroat and have
Mhm,
no emotion. Actually, most of the women I've interviewed are very caring, or can understand where their clients have gone through because of the experiences they went through
mhm,
when they were at their lowest point of their lives. And, people gravitate to women who've been able to overcome it because they want to know how they're able to overcome it and if it can help them. Because also, this is the type of thing that's been passed on from generation to generation to generation, thinking that's the only way to live. We don't know
mhm.
any better. And that's why it's so important to highlight these stories where, we can say, no, not all women are like that. No, not all women are quiet and submissive. Yes, you can get out of this situation. You can still be a businesswoman and have a heart. Just like having proof. Like, I've interviewed
Mhm.
over 700 Asian women. So each and every person's story is different. It comes from a different place. They have similarities, yes, of course, but each of them have their own story.
I've heard you mention a couple of times creating safe spaces and self confidence. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some examples of how you can create a safe space? And then what are some tips for building self confidence?
Yeah, for sure. So, you don't have to start really big. If you want to create a safe space, it can start with your friends and family. If there's someone who you can trust, where you can just share what you're feeling that day, like, that makes a huge difference, right? Because a lot of us, we just hold everything in, and that doesn't help us. And that actually makes us, like, even worse, right? We just feel like we can't go out there and speak our truth or say how we feel because it's not considered a strength. It's considered a weakness, right? So it's really important to go out there and create safe spaces. So, like, one, it could be with your friend. Another one, you can hire a coach, or you can seek professional help. There's no shame in any of those. You can create Facebook groups, you can create clubs, you can, like, Clubhouse. I create chats where people just can openly talk about stuff, right? Whether what they're feeling is, they're not feeling the greatest, or just being able to celebrate that they're able to get through the day, because most people can't get through the day, especially with the time that we're in. Like, we're all stuck at home, we have so many restrictions, and that can really heighten our mental health issues. And so you don't have to go through, like, big things to do that. Even just learning to listen to podcasts like yours and mine is a safe space, or just journaling, finding different ways to just be able to free yourself from your thoughts, right? Like, just
Mhm.
let it all out. Even if it means just taking a walk outside to clear your head, that's great, right? Because we need to learn to mind dump all our thoughts sometimes. Cause, like, we're doing things 24/7. Our brain is on like on call 24/7. 10,000
Right.
things go through our head. And if we don't have an outlet to just let that all out, it's going to screw with us, right? So it's really important to find different ways that work for you to just let it all out. Even if it means going into the bathroom and screaming, that's fine. Because it's just
Right.
an outlet for you to just let it all out. Nobody needs to know what you're doing. That's just your sacred time and your sacred space to do it. So when it comes to building confidence, it's the same thing, right? Find different ways that work for you, because what may work for me might not work for you. So, like, for me, doing meditation does not work for me. I end up falling asleep, and every time I do it, it's just an epic fail. And I thought something
Right.
was wrong with me, but I realized it just wasn't for me. So there's a difference with, not working for you and not for you, right? And you'll know that because as you learn to work on yourself, you're going to have your intuition knowing what works for you and not, right? As women, we're so afraid to use our intuition because we're afraid of maybe something might go wrong, right? Or what you pictured in your head isn't necessarily what's happening now, but everything will make sense in the long run. You'll look back and be like, now I know why I had to go through it like this. And taking it step by step, right? You don't have to, like, be self confident like right away. Rome wasn't built in a day. And I believe in taking small daily actionable steps that yield the big results. Like you see all those people in the media who have overnight success. That's not overnight success. That's been
Not
years
at
in the
all.
making,
Right.
blood, sweat, and tears to get to where they are today. And so I think if we can learn, or if we can just share things like this, just really be honest, like people can realize like this is a journey. This is a lifelong journey that we'll be working on for the rest of our lives, because we're going to have new challenges, new setbacks, new environments. I mean, no one was prepared for this pandemic, right? So,
Right.
so so at least if something, like knock on wood, something like this happens again, we have the tools and resources to overcome it and work on ourselves and take care of our mental well-being so that we can be the best version of ourselves.
So this kind of makes me think about the imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
actually tomorrow I'm teaching a class on overcoming imposter syndrome. But a lot of that stems from the lack of self confidence or preconceived ideas that have been embedded in our brains of who we really are. So, in your practice as a self confidence coach, do you encounter a lot of women who are struggling with imposter syndrome?
Oh
And
yeah.
what are some of the common um, solutions or remedies that you prescribe to help them overcome that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm guilty of it as well. When I first started my podcast, like I would compare myself to all the women I interviewed. And I
Mhm.
realized that my chapter one, I can't compare my chapter one to their chapter 20, right? And I tell clients the same thing, like you can't compare yourself to them because the situation you're in is totally different from their situation. So it's not going to make sense. And of course, when you look at them, like, oh yeah, they've already made it, but you didn't know the blood, sweat, and tears that they had to put through to get to where they are today.
Mhm.
And just learning to even like list down some of the things that you've done in the past so well. It doesn't make you, a fraud, because a lot of us feel like we're a fraud. But if you have a list of like things that you've done in the past, you're not a fraud. Like you've accomplished so much. What's stopping you now? Right. And I think we forget to celebrate all the things we've done in the past, or sometimes make us
Mhm.
realize that our past doesn't necessarily have to be our future or our present. Right. And I highlight stories of the women I interview to share that with them. Right. Like one lady used to be a drug addict, sold drugs, went to jail for 3 years. And most people would probably not, won't be able to bounce back from that, right? Because it's like, who am I? I'm an ex convict. How am I going
Mhm.
to go out there and create change? But the moment you realize like that happened in the past, it's over with. You need to let that go, and anything's possible. And when you can learn to just believe in you, yourself, your capabilities, you're going to go out there and just find different ways to get to where you want to go, right? Seeing things from a different perspective and creating that mindset shift will make a huge difference, right? Showcasing those stories also will help them realize, okay, well, if she was an ex-convict and she was able to be a
Mhm.
successful coach and run a
Right.
successful business, then I can do it, right? Like when I face moments of self-doubt, like I say three things to myself. I say, I am loved, I am worthy, and I am enough. And I keep saying that until I feel better, because I still also go through imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
because we're all human.
We are. We are all human. And I believe that everyone has their bouts with overcoming or having to overcome imposter syndrome at some point in their life. Now, we've mentioned a couple of times about asking for help when you find yourself in a situation where it's like, oh, this is overwhelming. I don't know what to do. But as you and I both know, people of color, we have a problem with that
Oh
because
yeah.
we look at asking for help as a sign of weakness. What do we say to people of color, business owners who are in need of help? And how do they get past that? It is a cultural thing for all of us
Yeah.
that we have been ingrained with. You don't ask for help, you don't tell people your business. That shows that feeds into you're not worthy, you're not okay, you're not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, you know, always telling people it's okay to ask for help, and realizing like asking for help can really jumpstart your business or your career or just your path, right? I know a lot of like in my upbringing, asking for help is not considered a good thing either. It's a sign of weakness. It's shameful because it's like you're asking for a handout, or it's a pride issue, right? Like we're too prideful to ask for help. We can do this on their own. But really, me trying to do everything on my own delayed my success, because it's like
Mm.
I don't want to ask help from anybody. I don't want to trust anyone because I'm afraid of getting scammed. But if we keep putting out that kind of energy into the world, how do you expect other people to come to you, right? And
Right.
so this is a huge thing. Like you have to understand, like, yes, of course, unfortunate things happen, but you have to take that as a lesson, right? A lesson or a blessing. But that's things we just can't stop, right? It's going to
Right.
happen to us no matter what we do. Like you have all kinds of blind spots that other people can can look
Can
out
help
for
us
us.
see.
Yeah.
Right.
And
They
also it's like the kind of energy you put out there, right? Like there's people out there who really do want to help you to help you succeed, right? Just do your research if you want. That's not, I'm not telling you not to, but
right.
you just can't go in life thinking you can't trust anybody and never ask for help, especially when you're in business. Like if you can't do that for yourself, like how can others come to you for that same thing?
Entrepreneurship is the journey of building your business and creating your brand and making things successful, but it's also building yourself up and creating your personal identity within that business or as a business owner and making yourself a better human being all around. So, one goes with the other. It's not just about building the business, but it's also about creating the space for you to grow as an individual and as a person, as well as a business owner. Let's talk about the concept of entrepreneurship within the Asian culture.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the Philippines, that's all we ever did, right? We have
Mhm.
family businesses, and basically like the next generation is supposed to take over the family business so that that legacy just keeps going on. So not everyone has the luxury to go out there and do their own thing because they're tied to this family business that they have to take care of, that's been created from generation to generation to
So, why
generation.
is that the case? Why is it that the Asian culture is so big on having your own business or being an entrepreneur?
I think it's also like this status symbol, like this is my success story, right? You
Hmm.
see me in a different way, people treat you differently. And it's like people, like you mentioned in Crazy Rich Asians, people know you by your last name or the business that you're in. And that's so prevalent growing up in the Philippines. It's like I would ask my mom, "Oh, can I go out with so and so?" And the first thing they'll be like, "Who's their parents? What do they do for a living? What's their last name?" I'm like,
Mm.
"I don't know." But that's how it
Yeah.
is, right? Like, and I
Uh-huh.
think it's because that's how they see success. They just keep using the same formula over and over again. And I guess it's the same thing when you come to America, right? What is that American dream? It's owning a business, right? For some people, it's owning a business. For some people, it's getting a great job. But as Asian people, we want to be able to make our own living, be our own boss, do
Mhm.
our own thing. And that's not always easy. Like if you saw the movie Minari, it really, it's a really great movie about how a Korean family wanted to create their own farm because that's
Mhm.
how they wanted to make a living, be their own boss.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful story. So, March, we're in Women's History Month.
Mhm.
I know in your podcast you have interviewed hundreds of amazing Asian women, many of whom were business owners. So talk a little bit about the history of women as entrepreneurs in the Asian culture.
I think back then it wasn't a thing, right? Most of the time you're told to, go to a good school and then you get married and you become the housewife.
Mhm.
So, um I think most of that happens when something grave really happens and you have no choice, but the woman has to go out there and find a solution. And the woman has to basically step up and find a way to get this, to make this happen, right? To get out of this situation.
Right.
And maybe that could have been the start of women being able to own a business, right? And sometimes we have to go through our, I guess, lowest points in our lives to find
Mhm.
that opportunity, to find that new door that we're meant to be, or to that path that we're meant to go on.
Right.
And so most of the women I've interviewed also started their business because one, just the experiences they went through, just being sick and tired of doing the same thing over and over again, being able to find their purpose in
Mm.
life, right? The purpose of life isn't maybe working at a job 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's
Right.
creating a business, right? And so, like, there's many factors, right? But these are some of the commonalities that women have, right? It's either, they've been at their lowest of their low and they realize there's no other way than to go up.
This is a perfect segue to talk about your upcoming book and
Yeah.
to also talk about the Facebook page that you have that caters to Asian women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so we started this book called Asian Women Who Boss Up. And this is a book that I'm super proud of and just a personal project because there's no books out there that highlight this many Asian women on a cover of a book. And so I was thinking, why isn't there a book that's like that, right? Like,
Mhm.
just like when I said there's so many things that, like, the five people you always see on different platforms, it was the
Right.
same thing with books. I was like sick and tired of seeing the
Mm.
same five people that you see everywhere. And
Mhm.
so, like I mentioned, if I wanted representation, it had to start with myself. And creating this book was not easy. It was also a challenge. We have this book, we have a virtual summit coming up at the end of the month that's free
Okay.
for anyone to join. Doesn't have to be Asian women, anyone can join, because a lot of people always ask me this question, like, because you focus on Asian women, don't you think like that's like not a good thing because you're only focusing on one community? I'm like, no, I think it can still go beyond that, right? And just because my mission is helping Asian women doesn't mean it can't affect people from different cultures, right? Actually, I've had a lot of people who weren't Asian who tells me they love this whole series of Asian women who boss up
Right.
because they get to know a little bit more about Asian culture and what women go through and realize we go through similar things.
And I think a couple points that always come to mind because you and I are a perfect example, right? You're Asian, I'm Black.
Yeah.
However, we connected,
Yes.
and decided that, oh, this is something that we want to do. We want to have this conversation because we connect. We see a lot of commonalities in the way we think and the things that we're passionate about, but we just happen to be from different cultures and that we do need to get over what does the outside look like and what is the inside all about. And that really, I think, helps us not just as human beings, but as entrepreneurs as well. And talk a little bit more about the Asian hate crimes that are occurring and how that may be affecting the Asian businesses that you find throughout the country.
For sure. I mean, I'm fortunate that no one close to me has gone through that type of hate crime, but it is happening everywhere, not just in the US. It's happening in Australia, in Canada, in Europe. Women are 3 times more likely to get targeted than men. And so now we have to, like, be mindful of ourselves. You might get jumped or not because of the color of your skin, because there's this belief or stereotype that all viruses come from China and all Asian people are Chinese. And so everyone gets
Right.
targeted because of those two things, right? No one knows any better. No one's educating them on it. No one is putting it on mainstream media that all these things are happening. And that's probably because, too, we're not very vocal people, right?
Mhm.
We've been taught to never make any noise, just stay in the background. But there comes a time where enough is enough and we have to speak up. A lot of Asian businesses were affected, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. Like, you go into a store or a Chinese restaurant and it's like a ghost town. And I listen to some of the things that, like, I asked them how they're doing and what's been going on. They're like, yeah, it's been really bad. Like, no one comes in. People are afraid because we're Asian that if the virus might be in the food that we prepare, just like crazy things like that, right? And it's unfortunate that this is happening. And even in some places, businesses are getting, like, shattered, or like, people are breaking into their businesses or ruining it because of that. So it's really unfortunate this is all happening. But this type of racism hasn't been it's not
It's
something
not
new.
new.
It's been going
Right.
on for a long time. It's because we don't
Mhm.
talk about it. People think it doesn't happen. And also, people don't talk about the things that Chinese people or Asian people had to go through coming to America and Canada, like having the Chinese Exclusion Act. Nobody talks about that in history books. Why don't they put that in history books? Like, we
Mhm.
did have this, right? Even Japanese people were in camps. Like, nobody talks
Right.
about that. Like, why isn't this in the history books? Like, what are they hiding? Like, what is the country hiding? Why do they need to hide this kind of information? Do they just want to make, I don't know, the white people look better over us? Like, what's the problem?
Right. We could have another hour conversation
Yeah.
just about that
Yeah.
because I do feel that people of color regardless of where you originated, our
Yeah,
stories are very similar.
for sure.
They really are, and our struggles are also very similar. So I always end my podcast with in the exact same way. The name of this show is Let Me Say This.
For sure. To anyone who's listening, let me say this, as women, we've been told that we're not capable of doing so many things, but I want you to realize you're more capable than you think you are. It's how you perceive yourself that really stops you from stepping into your greatness. And if you can't do it alone, be okay with asking for help. As women, we have to learn to help each other so that we can create the opportunities that we deserve.
So, Sheena, if someone wants to reach out to you, you're doing lots of great things and they want to connect with you, find out what's going on, how do they do that?
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, you can check out my website, sheenayapchan.com. You can check out, I have a free report called 8 Ways to Boss Up Your Confidence in Business and Life that you can get. I also offer 20-minute complimentary one-on-one coaching if you need help with confidence or even learning to put yourself out there more, right? Because as women, that's something that we go through. We also have the book that's available for pre-order, and part of those proceeds will go to nonprofit organizations that are fighting anti-Asian racism at the moment. And we also have a virtual summit happening at the end of the month that's free to register. That's all on my website. And as for the podcast, you can go to the tab self-confidence. There's past
Mhm.
episodes that you can check out, some cool things. You can check out tools and resources as well. You can also check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio. And the easiest way to find me is to Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
Now, that very few people can say
Yeah.
that they are the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet. So good for you. Once again, thank you so much, Sheena, for this time that you have spent with me. I've enjoyed every conversation that we have. I always enjoy. So thank you. I'm Tisha Tyler, your host for Let Me Say This.